Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Okay, so we are looking at a truly monumental shift in the web publishing world today. On May 20, 2026, the highly anticipated WordPress 7.0 update finally dropped, and it brought something the platform has literally never had in its entire 23-year history. We're talking about genuine, built-in collaborative editing. Teams everywhere are absolutely scrambling to test it out right now.
But, here's the massive question that pretty much all the upgrade guides are completely ignoring. Is your site actually ready for real-time collaboration? Because look, it's one thing to have this shiny new feature sitting there in your dashboard, right? But it's an entirely different story whether your underlying server foundation can actually handle it.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with the big WordPress update, then uncover the hidden hosting gap, compare polling versus WebSockets, look at shared hosting limitations, and finally, run through your technical checklist. All right, starting off with Section 1, the big WordPress update. Seriously, think about how incredibly frustrating it used to be to get locked out of a WordPress post just because a colleague was, fixing a typo. We've all furiously Slack messaged a coworker being like, hey, please close that tab. Well, those days are officially over. WordPress 7.0 introduces live cursors so you can see exactly where your team members are typing, plus inline comments, app mentions, and a full revision timeline right there inside the block editor. Multiple team members can finally edit the exact same post simultaneously without locking each other out. It's an absolute game changer for content creation.
Now, you might be wondering how they actually pulled this off. It all comes down to CRDTs, which stands for Conflict-Free Replicated Data Types. I know, that sounds like incredibly heavy jargon, but let's break down what it actually means for you. It's the exact same underlying tech used by tools you probably use every day, like Google Docs and Figma. Basically, it ensures that if two people are changing the exact same paragraph at the exact same second, the changes merge seamlessly. Your site isn't going to break, and you won't lose a single word of data.
So that brings us to Section 2. The hidden hosting gap. And this right here is the absolute vital takeaway of this whole explainer. It's your WordPress hosting environment, not the 7.0 feature itself, that determines the actual quality of your collaboration experience. You see, WordPress 7.0 didn't just ship with one single way to sync data. Actually, it shipped with two very different transport modes. And these modes completely dictate how fast your team's edits sync across your screens.
Let's look at those modes in Section 3. Polling versus WebSockets.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the sheer speed difference between these two setups. On one hand, we have HTTP polling. This is the universal default fallback mode. It essentially fires a post request to your server every few seconds. Practically speaking, that means you'll see your colleagues typing with about a 2 to 5 second latency. Not terrible, but noticeable. Then, on the other hand, we have WebSocket. This is an optional upgrade that maintains a constant, persistent, bidirectional connection. And that drops your latency to under 100 milliseconds. It's practically instant.
So, looking at this breakdown, which lane does your current hosting plan actually put you in? Well, if you're on standard shared hosting, you're definitely going to be using HTTP polling. It works everywhere, which is great, but you do get that 2 to 5 second delay. Honestly, for small teams of 2 or 3 editors, that's totally fine. But if you're an agency with 10 or more editors and you want that lightning-fast, under 100 millisecond WebSocket speed, you're rarely, if ever, going to find that supported on a basic shared hosting plan.
Which leads us directly into Section 4, shared hosting limitations.
So the reality for most site owners in 2026 is that shared hosting environments impose some pretty hard constraints. They usually run on systems like Cloud Linux with LVE, which essentially caps your concurrent PHP workers and terminates any idle processes after about 30 to 60 seconds. Think of a WebSocket like a constantly open phone line between your browser and the server. Well, shared hosting is basically like a phone company that forcefully hangs up the line on you after a minute just to save resources. And that right there is exactly why WebSockets fail on shared hosting before they can even become useful.
To really see how this scales, just consider the number 40. That is the number of completely uncacheable database requests generated every single minute if you have 10 simultaneous editors using that default HTTP polling on a shared server. Every single pulse is hitting your database. Like we said, for 2 or 3 people, totally fine. But larger teams are going to very quickly hit that PHP worker ceiling. And when that happens, you're looking at some serious performance lag across your whole site.
To ground all these technical limitations, let's look at this really great insight from Chrust over at AHosting. He hits the nail on the head here.
He notes that the default HTTP polling works precisely because it was built specifically for these shared environments. So shared hosting isn't broken. The core WordPress team actually deliberately designed this 2 to 5 second polling fallback so that real-time collaboration would function on the broadest possible range of hosting setups right from day one.
Okay, time for the actionable stuff. Section 5, your technical checklist.
We are going to run through a rapid-fire 5-point inspection of your site right now to guarantee a super smooth collaboration setup. We're going to check your PHP version, verify your Heartbeat API, look into object caching, confirm your user roles, and finally adjust those caching layers.
First up, let's talk about an absolutely crucial point regarding PHP. Now, while WordPress officially says PHP 7.4 is the minimum, the CRDT conflict resolution library we talked about earlier performs significantly better if you're on PHP 8.2 or higher. You're also going to need a pretty hefty 512 megabytes of PHP memory if you want to run the new WPAI client reliably. And here's a major warning for you. Please check your performance plugins. Tools like WP Rocket might have actually disabled your Heartbeat API in the past to save resources, but Heartbeat literally must be active at its default 15-second interval, otherwise your collaboration polling simply won't work at all.
Next on the checklist, you really want to set up persistent object caching. Think Redis or Memcached to drastically lower the pressure on your database from all those constant polling requests. Also, double-check that your team actually has editor or administrator roles assigned to them. Why? Because authors and contributors actually can't trigger collaboration sessions by default. And critically, pay attention to this one. You must exclude the admin-hx endpoint and the WP admin directory from all your caching layers, like Cloudflare or WP Rocket. If you fail to do this, your site is just going to serve stale cached responses and completely break the live sync loop.
To wrap up this technical advice, we've got to talk about scaling. Look, if you're managing an agency or maybe you run a really busy newsroom with 5 or more editors working simultaneously, you simply must upgrade to a virtual private server, or VPS. This is going to give you the root access and that persistent process control required to actually enable WebSockets. It completely eliminates that polling latency ceiling and unlocks that instant sub-100 millisecond sync for your whole team.
Which leaves us with this final provocative thought. WordPress 7.0 is incredibly powerful, and your editorial team is no doubt totally ready to collaborate. But is your hosting foundation actually ready to support them? I challenge you today to log into your cPanel, verify your PHP version, double-check those caching exclusions, or just contact your host directly to verify your infrastructure. Don't let your server be the bottleneck to your team's creativity. Thanks for tuning into this explainer, and we'll catch you next time.